Hello everyone and welcome back to another video here on my channel. This one is about fire-bellied toads, as I'm sure the title clued you in on, but this is not going to be a full care guide. If you are interested in that, I will include the care guide up here. If you guys are also interested in learning a little bit more about fire-bellied toads and what they are, where they come from, I'll include that up here as well. I point because I don't know which side it's going to end up on, so 2 pointers. But anyways, this video is about fire-bellied toad diet, so I'm going to go a little bit more detail about what I feed them and how much I feed them and how often I feed them in this video. So if that's something you're interested in, keep watching because here we go. Before we get started, I'd like to ask you to please subscribe and hit the notification bell because I would like to have you guys here for future videos, so please stay. Let's go ahead and get started. So fire-bellied toads are insectivores, which means that they eat insects, and so they will eat anything that fits in their mouths. So you have to be really careful about how much you feed them because they can get obese, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But they will eat anything, and especially if it's moving, and so you can offer a variety of insects, and a variety of insects is best to offer, but I'm gonna go ahead and list all of the different insects you can offer. So I'm gonna look down to read off the list, but you can offer appropriately sized dubia roaches, hornworms, crickets, chopped red wigglers, chopped earthworms, blackworms, tubifex worms, and then on occasion you can offer mealworms and waxworms. Now the reason that you want to offer mealworms on occasion is because they have a hard outer body, which can be difficult for frogs to digest. So once in a while it's fine, but not as a staple diet. And then waxworms are super fatty, so you're only going to want to offer them every once in a while because, like I said, they have a tendency to become obese. If you have a juvenile fire-bellied toad, you're going to want to offer them some of the smaller foods, so like a tubifex or a blackworm. They're going to be where you want to stick to. But if you have a full-grown fire-bellied toad like I do, you can offer all kinds of different appropriately sized foods. My frogs have a great feeding response to dubia nymphs, so like the little baby dubia roaches. They also have a good feeding response to mealworms, to waxworms. Hornworms are also great to offer, but you have to make sure that they're not obviously the really big ones that are going to be bigger than your frog. You're going to want to offer them right after they've hatched out of the egg and grown for a couple days. At this point they'll be really tiny, they'll be that big, and that's a perfect size to offer to your fire-bellied toad. As long as the insects that you're offering are not wider than the space between your frog's eyes, you're good to go. Basically, the space between the eye rule is because the throat of your animal is going to typically be about the same size as the space between their eyes, and so if you're offering food that's a lot bigger than that space, then they could potentially choke on it because their throat is only going to be so big. So you're not going to want to offer your frog really big crickets, for example, because they can't swallow them. You're going to want to offer tinier crickets. So that's an example. You're going to want to only feed your frog what they will consume in the period of 3 to 5 minutes, because they will shove so much food in their mouth, and they use their hands to do so. It's really cute, but they will shove so much food in their mouth in that time period, and like I said, they are prone to obesity, and that's not something you want your frog to have. So you want to offer food that's in a limited time span. So 3 to 5 minutes is about as long as I allow my frogs to freely eat. When it comes to offering food, there's going to be a few different things you can do. If you have a mainly aquatic enclosure, I recommend taking the frogs out to feed them, because otherwise the water could become soiled with insects, or they could drown. It's going to be more difficult. Along the same lines, if you're offering eco-earth, the frogs could lunge for food and take in eco-earth. So I think that it's safer just to feed them outside the enclosure, or to feed them with little tongs. I have 4 frogs and I have tried feeding with tongs, and they all attack the tongs at once. So I personally take one frog out at a time, and fortunately I can identify all my frogs by their markings, so I know them personally. So I just take one out at a time in a little container, and I let them free hunt their food for 3 to 5 minutes, and then I put them back, and then I get a different frog. This way I can make sure that all the frogs are eating properly, that all the frogs are getting food, and not just one is hoarding it all. And I can also make sure that the enclosure doesn't get soiled with food, and that uneaten food in the enclosure doesn't go bad, or it doesn't start to eat my frogs. Like crickets, for example. Crickets are notorious for attacking and eating lizards and amphibians that are kept in the enclosure with them, because there's no food source for crickets, so they'll just eat your animal. It's disgusting. Frogs can also be very energetic when it comes to eating, and so if you feed in the enclosure, they can sometimes bite each other. They shouldn't do any damage, but it's not something you want to risk either. So I think that feeding them outside the enclosure is just very easy. The one thing that's problematic about that though is that it requires handling them to get them out of the enclosure. I simply wash my hands really well, and then I wet them with their tank water, and then I just scoop them out really quick. I'm not handling them for more than half a second. The reason you want to make sure that your hands are clean and then maybe that they're wet with tank water is because the oils on your hands can make your amphibians sick, especially if you're having like lotions or perfumes or something like that on it. So you want to be really, really careful and make sure you wash your hands well and rinse off the soap or any detergent that you use well, and then make sure that you're wetting your hand with their aquarium water. And then after all is said and done, you want to make sure that your hands are washed again, because they are mildly toxic. Like, they release a toxin on their skin and it can be irritating to you. So make sure that you wash your hands, and after being in their enclosure you wash your hands. So touching them, being in their enclosure, wash your hands. Before, after, wash your hands. As is the case with any insect that you're offering, you're going to want to make sure that they are gut loaded. And gut loading is the process by which you offer nutritious foods to your insects. So you can offer fruits and vegetables. You're going to want to make sure you avoid something like a potato. A potato is not going to gut load the insects properly. It doesn't have a lot of nutrition. It's just like a carb. It's a filler. So you're going to want to make sure you're offering, like, I don't know, carrots, turnip greens, broccoli, apples, oranges, healthy foods that will offer nutrients to your insects, so that your insects offer them to your frogs. And you're going to want to make sure that you are gut loading the insects at least 48 hours before you offer them. If you're just feeding your insects healthy foods all the time, you don't have to worry about that time period. Another thing that you want to make sure you do is you dose the insects with a quality calcium and vitamin and D3 supplement. I personally offer Apache Calcium Plus, which is a multivitamin as well as a calcium D3 supplement. It is a very fine powder that sticks to the insects really well, and I think that that's the best way to offer it for frogs, because they're so messy when they eat. Sometimes they can knock like the clunky powder off, so that's why I prefer to use it with my frogs. I dust their food every other feeding to every second feeding, and then I feed them 2 to 3 times a week. So I hope that that's helpful for you. I think that's everything. Oh, the one insect you don't have to dust would be like a chopped earthworm or a chopped red wiggler, because they have the nutrients already. Like, I've read that they don't have to be dusted, and hornworms don't have to be dusted either. So those are 3 insects you don't have to dust. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and let me know down in the comments below. Also, please hit the notification bell and subscribe. I'd love to have you here. Please also check out the fire belly care video. I'll include it up here. With all that said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!